Your sword! Power Ranger!
Hey guys, this is Ryan, and this cannon howls. 3 years on from when Hasbro gave up on the line, welcome to completing the Lightning Collection Power Blaster, starting with the toy history. So the Power Blaster is an interesting one in Power Rangers, the first combination weapon for the main team, comprised of individual signature weapons. It never made it in the Season 1 Mighty Morphin toy line, despite being extensively featured in the series, and even though several other roleplay items did see releases. Dragon Dagger and the Blade Blaster arrived without issue, then Saba gave the White Ranger his own signature weapon, but somehow the 5 main Rangers never had theirs, despite having them on the show as soon as the 3rd episode. Bandai Japan managed to do the complete set of Legend weapons in 1992 during Zyranger. They were obviously in a kidified scale and released not as the complete Howling Cannon, but as 2 box sets of weapons. And while there were some nice elements, like the lance extending and the axe shifting piece, it was disappointing that the sword blade was so short. Ironically, a big convention in Japanese kids' toys, and the bow had such obvious connector pegs on the underside. And with no arrow or string, you really had to use your imagination on that one, probably the worst weapon of the 5. Worth mentioning as well that the sword was actually a mold reuse, and thanks to Morphin Toys on Instagram for pointing out that its hilt was originally featured in the toy line for Musashi the Samurai Lord. So yeah, that was one that they were pulling in from somewhere else. The difference being theirs was 1 blade rather than the original 2-piece combo, though that idea would be explored by the lance having a connection slot, and a double-ended power sword would later be explored by the Power Rangers Boom Studios comics via the Tyrannosaurus Sentry decades down the line. So in 1995, Bandai America eventually managed to put out a set of all 5 Rangers weapons, and as on the show, they could be combined into the Power Blaster. There would be some compromises with the US release of the set, however, as the Power Lance connector ports were removed, basically flattened to something less breakable or smoother for safety concerns probably. The already short power sword had its blade tip rounded off akin to a butter knife, just like they'd done with some of the Megazord sabers at the time, and the power axe had its lights and sounds removed, possibly to make it cheaper. The whole set was priced at only $17. We weren't to know what had been altered from Japan back then though, and my brother and I loved having this set and would pretend to battle with them memorably during summer days in the back garden around summer 95 or 6. There were even some box exclusive modes to combine them in other ways, actually a result of Japan selling them as 2 separate sets, which was fun. When there were only 2 of you, you could share, hold and battle with all the weapons at once. That was all we got back then, but between 2013 and 2018, Bandai's Legacy line gave us some incredible high-quality replicas of roleplay items, and towards the end, they actually ventured into a full-size power sword, arguably correcting the injustice of the kid-size one from the 90s. This one is gigantic. It eclipsed the Dragon Dagger, Blaster and Saba, which were again covered by the Legacy collection first, and even the Golden Power Staff that followed on from it. Unfortunately, it was not to be the start of a new full-size Power Blaster, however, as Bandai would lose the Master Toy license to Hasbro in 2018. This then led to Hasbro's own take on a collector's line, as the Lightning Collection started to reiterate some of the same selection of recent Bandai Legacy, including the Morpher and the Dragon Dagger. But what really got our attention was the announcement of a slightly smaller Power Sword, followed in rapid succession by a Blue Ranger Power Lance. This was wild and started to hint at the possibility of finally getting all 5 main Ranger weapons in full size for the first time. Once the Power Daggers followed, we were off to the races, and the last 2 seemed like a matter of when, not if. But as often happens, it did not. There were rumours of a HasLab, basically crowd-funded project to finish the set, leaked to leakers and devoured by fans as hope that the blaster would find a way of releasing. It led to people like me who had been putting off buying Hasbro's versions, ending up buying them with an expectation and hope that it was an investment in a future complete set. And some of them were expensive. I paid £158 for the sword, and that was with 20% off, £66 for a reduced lance, and I think £90 for a reduced daggers. So £314 in the whole for an incomplete set. That was with money off. So Bandai 90s had done everything in kids play scale. Bandai Legacy 2010s did 3 weapons, but only 1 from the Power Blaster. Hasbro Lightning Collection 2020s did 4 weapons and 3 of the 5 of the Power Blaster. So by this point, it seemed like it was just never going to happen. We were never going to get all the way to a proper full-size Power Blaster. That was until now. In mid-2025, MirroredLineProps revealed they had created full-sized, 3D printed, Lightning Collection compatible Power Axe and Power Bow weapons. There was more though, as they had also worked out a way to join them to your existing 3 Lightning Collection weapons to form the Power Blaster. So I joined the waiting list, and in late 2025, K3vL0ck was behind batch print and assembly, and £530 to MirroredLine and an unexpected £107 customs fee later, I finally had them. Onto the design. So like much of Mighty Morphin, the design of the power weapons are pretty iconic, I would say. It could be nostalgia saying that. A lot of seasons have had great signature weapons for the team where they don't feel like compromisers. Turbo, Ninja Storm being great examples. But Mighty Morphin got it right from the off. 5 very different melee weapons that somehow all make sense together and assemble into a combined mode that's epic to look at, visually gave the team a fantastic frame to pose behind, and worked for the group as it was so wide because of the bow. I've loved how many combined versions of the Power Blaster we've had over the years, from the Automorphins to the Legacy figures to the Lightning Collection, plus collector lines like Figuarts, 3-0, Mezco, Super Shodo. Everyone knows you need to give us the Power Blaster. It's a fundamental part of Power Rangers lore, probably the most recognizable combined weapon from across the franchise. And now, having them in this scale, we can appreciate all the crazy patterning detail and icons that make these some of the most engineered weapons of the franchise. Like these were being produced in a time where detail wasn't really prevalent, not really needed for a 4x3 SD television, and yet they were doing things like giving each weapon the corresponding Ranger's dinosaur symbol. Having all 5, I start to notice recurring elements like triangles and stripes. The triangles definitely jive with the suits, the jewels and gold on the power sword hilt, the line detail on the bow, and there's a lot here that makes these items so much more lived in somehow. They're unique because of it. And as a mythical crossbow, it just works. There's a bit of just go with it fakery in terms of how the lance and daggers attach. What's interesting is that they don't really do this form of cheating again. Now yes, they do cheat weapon scale changing all the time, but they don't really ever have weapons that can connect with no real world visible method of attachment. In the show, it's literal magic that holds them together. In the action figure world, it was pegs. For kids roleplay, it was fragile friction tabs, and now from MirroredLine for cosplay and display, it's a considerately designed adapter piece which replaces some of the depth on the bow, but ultimately cannot hide the fact that it becomes another bit of material around the handles of the weapons. Being painted to match does help it though. While we're talking materials, according to MirroredLine, the axe is UV resin coated PLA with a PVC core, and the bow is acetone smooth ABS with wood dowel supports. The Hasbro versions are all plastic with a little bit of metal on the sword hilt and battery compartment, so nothing as heavy as Bandai Legacy, but you probably wouldn't want it to be, given that they all combine together. And let me tell you, the Power Blaster's heavy. What's bad about it then? So regular viewers will notice that I've just skipped past my usual differences from the original section, as it's kind of difficult to talk about it in isolation without being negative or positive on it. So I'm going to incorporate differences from the originals into these sections instead. And I can't say it was completely smooth sailing with the 3D custom parts of this set. For one, there are pieces that come off, like the axe mode changer button and the bow claw that hides the electronics. I did follow some advice to try prise the slots out and make it grab the sides a bit more. It actually broke one of the tabs off, so I gave up on that and returned to instead using the tape that was provided with the pieces. I've also found that the glue I needed to attach the second half of the bow with hasn't been able to take the weight of the weapons, so it requires repeated application. There's only one round peg in there, whereas I feel like a second would have made it much more structurally durable. Instead, it just swings around on one peg once the glue fails. The combined weight of all lance and dagger pieces along the bow is greater than the screws in the axe's grip part, and these have definitely detached and kind of swing wildly when I move the whole thing around. This is probably not a valid display option. It goes without saying that the paintwork is not going to be on par with a manufacturing factory facility. They are huge pieces, so from a distance or with all 5 together, you're unlikely to notice as much. The colours are there, and there was clearly a lot of effort made to match what should be there. Jury's kind of out on this one. For the Power Blaster, I wish there was a less onerous way to attach the lance and daggers, and wonder if Hasbro were going to sort something out. My annoyances lie with the series itself here. The magical floating combination is just glossed over. Don't think too much about it. We can see how the bow joins to the axe, and even where the sword slots on too. The lance and daggers were never afforded such believable slots. The screws are necessary, but don't allow for a quick combination or disassembly of the combined Power Blaster mode, so it's hard to know which way to build it up in. In show order, the bow should go onto the axe first, which you attach with 2 small screws from the bow into the bracket of the axe, followed by a giant screw which traverses the diameter of the cannon barrel. All well and good, but you've then got 12 screws ahead of you in order to attach the lance and daggers, and it's quite difficult to get them on level because they don't clip in, so you're just kind of eyeballing it to make sure they're all the right length. And actually, once they're in, they're probably the most locked in parts of the combination, because at the extreme other end of the spectrum, Power Sword doesn't attach. Though there are some sort of, I guess, magnets on the axe, which I imagine are meant to grasp onto the detailing of the handle. However, I don't find this to be particularly effective in my one. While the bumpers at the back of the axe do perform a similar role as the old Bandai version, you are effectively just keeping the sword balanced unless you do something more. I might look at attaching something to the front, even some grippy black foam or something to keep it a little less wobbly. Right now it's being held at the front really well with blue tack. As we're talking about the original 3 weapons, I should mention Hasbro's Lightning Collection versions. The sword having text on the regular side of the blade is a big note. The light up side is kind of off silver because of being semi-translucent, so naturally you'd think just flip it over to the non-lit up side. But that's where they foolishly put all of the production and warning messaging. Ugh. The lance is quite wobbly, and some people still don't think it's long enough compared to the version seen on screen. I mean, that version in Cosmic Fury was kind of ridiculous. I know MirroredLine and K3vL0ck have worked up an additional piece for extending the lance even further. And the different lights and sound modes between them make it hard to have parity in the display department. The sword lights up, but there's not a static light display mode. It's either on with volume or off. The lance has a cool shimmering blade mode. If you hold the buttons in, the daggers have tiger sounds as part of their sound array, and the light up mode is sort of a middle road option between the other 2 releases. It's kind of fine given the ambition of the project. I don't expect them all to function completely the same, but it's weird how different they are. Like, Hasbro were straw polling which feature we like best, maybe to influence future versions or even seasons weapons in an abandoned toy line timeline. What's good about it then? Well, let me get back on the other side of this argument by saying the lights and sounds were already a cool idea on the Lightning Collection, especially the motion activated weapon sound effects. The 3D printed versions are on par with Lightning Collection in terms of what they try and deliver. Multiple modes of light and sound, so you can display them with light but without sound if wanted. There's also an impressive mode switcher on the axe, which activates the Power Rangers Power Blaster roll call for weapons through to actually firing the blaster. It also changes the color of the axe cannon from purple to red, because the Power Blaster fires color depending on who's directly behind that part, usually Jason. I will say I had some issue with a disconnected speaker when the axe arrived, but Mirrored Line was a hero and gave me a total newbie walkthrough for buying a replacement speaker and screwing it into the circuit board that the old one had been stripped off from, possibly in customs, who knows. So I went from worried I'd never hear the sounds that they put so much effort into, to paying about $5 and being able to resolve it. And it's amazing. Speaking of the Power Blaster, the blaster cappers do a lot to make the look of the combination significantly more complete. I might have enjoyed a bigger barrel for the axe cannon as it looks huge on the show, but actually this is fine. My logic has always been the less to have to swap out, the better. But the cappers on the Lance and Daggers certainly do feel necessary rather than looking at Hasbro's connector ports. It's constantly compromising between show prop and toy realism. And Mirrored Line also thought about how to introduce optional color to these pieces by using tiny round LEDs, which can be customized to different colors by using a remote. You can have them flash or be static, which is cool, kind of reminiscent of the Fan Home magazine Megazord Zord eyes. The ability to have a full-size power blaster is wild. Compared to the one that we had in the 90s, it's not even close. The sizing of the original is so interesting because it's so off. The original definitely served its purpose as a toy, whereas this could easily be displayed in multiple ways, and it does justice to any of them. It's worth mentioning the display bases. Hasbro started this out with the Dragon Dagger, but significantly upgraded them for the 3 power weapons, looking a bit like the weapons were coming out of rock. The 3D printed ones are designed to be in keeping with Hasbro's, down to the pink and black Ranger helmet icons, and it's amazing to have the option to have them all displayed separately. It would all look great on a set of shelves. What's good about the individual weapons then? Well, it felt like we just got a power sword from Bandai Legacy when the LC one followed. For saying there was one in like 25 years, then there being another, it was a hard one to pull the trigger on at the time, but I did it as an investment in a Power Blaster set. The 2 big things Hasbro brought to the table were again the aforementioned display stand, we didn't get that from Bandai, and the light up blade, which was a cool motion activated feature that riffed on the real effects from the show. I also appreciate the slight sizing differences, like the Red Ranger helmet Hasbro did. Again, it was just slightly more compact than the Bandai version. It felt less comical, less cartoonized. It's hard to say which one is more accurate, but the Hasbro one seems more realistic in terms of use. I guess the sword was always the big part of contention. If you do it as a proper sword, you're setting a precedent that the axe needs to be nearly as long, and the bow probably longer and wider again. So I can see how they wound up with the tiny power sword back in the day. Another fix on back in the day is that the lance is actually combinable again. Weird how Zyranger managed it for their toys, but Power Rangers removed it, and now Hasbro appreciate that it's a necessary element of the weapon. I mean, the clue was in the title, lance, not lancettes. The extending pieces feel great, though they don't properly lock into place very well. The daggers then feature a combined mode too. Apparently this was drawn from some Zyranger concept art that showed them connected. I guess it gives what are otherwise the plainest weapons of the collection something else to do. For the axe, while I don't think the moving element is as effective as the 90s version, the magnet just isn't strong enough to hold it in place, and you do have to use the super long screw piece in cannon mode, but it looks and feels substantial. The 3-mode switching button being incorporated into the weird yellow detail on the back was a great touch. The lights in the axe blade, I love it, great solution. It's a weapon that undoubtedly would have been done very well had Hasbro released it next. And then we would have had to have bought the bow. The bow resolves one of my big issues from the 90s original, that being the obviousness of the clips. These have panels which can be removed to allow more of a groove for the weapons to sit in, Returning the panels to the bow though completes the raised detailing. It's a nice touch, as is the string and the arrow. The option to swap the magnetic banding from Power Ranger to Zyranger is beautiful attention to detail too, and means you could be more about screen accuracy, as technically that would have been the version shown on screen. Well done to Mirrored Line for this project, and K3vL0ck for being able to small batch produce them. It's ambitious, it's ridiculous, and that's kind of the cross-section of where I am in my collecting at the moment. It's all these key pieces that shouldn't really be possible, but somehow the fandom is finding a way. Fair play to them for incorporating lights and sounds and a display stand. This is surely the closest a fan-made product has gotten to matching the style of an existing product category. I definitely would have snapped that rumoured HasLab up, but as that never happened, I'm so glad that someone picked up the slack and made something that looks and sounds the part. In conclusion, I feel incredibly lucky to have been able to finally finish this set. The power weapons are such iconic, unique pieces of Power Rangers lore, and I couldn't truly believe I would ever be in a position to hold full-sized ones, not least ones completed by fan enthusiasts, when the toy license holder who had come the furthest still left the project incomplete. What do you guys think of these then? Is around £951, nearly $1,300, what you expected to be laying down on a full-size power blaster? And will you be picking them up given the option? Or do you just wish Bandai Legacy had put their foot on the gas and done this years ago when prices were still low? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. A big thanks as ever to my supporters on Patreon. If you want to know what's next for me after ticking off yet another Grail item, join them on the Viewing Globe tier and check out your sneak peek of the plan over on there. I guess for now though, I just need to find a way to finish the Lightning Collection helmets. So until the next time, see you later.